Say, will somebody please pass the ketchup?
This is a tasty burger.
I'll take a Vornese burger and a side of Jason fingers.
Don't skimp on the meat. I got a real good eye for prime meat.
Welcome to Hamburgers and Horror, the home of meat, monsters, and massive movie rankings. I'm Noah Hook, and today we're doing something a little bit different. We are celebrating the 2-year anniversary of Hamburgers and Horror. Time flies when you're having fun, and over the past 2 years, I've reviewed 80 horror movies. Some are big franchises, some are absolute classics, some are hidden gems, and some are garbage fires. And today I'll be making a tier list of all 80 of these films. I'll be building this list with Tier Maker, and I'm going to start at the beginning with Hellraiser all the way to my latest review, Possessor. I have 6 tiers ranging from S to F, essentially going from masterpieces to bottom barrel pictures. I'll be considering their technical qualities, their originality, their impact, but my rankings will primarily be based on how much I like and appreciate the films. I'll be using the tiers to build chunks of quality for the films, but I'll also be vaguely ranking them within their tiers as well. I have not pre-made this list, so I really have no idea what the final product will look like. I just wanted to go with my gut for this. That being said, it's darn near impossible for me to not upset everyone at some point throughout this ranking, so please bear with me, and please let me know what you agree with and disagree with down in the comments, but do it politely. With all that said, why don't we hop over to Tier Maker? So here we are down at Tier Maker. We've got all 80 films here. I've pretty much got them in the order that I reviewed them, except I've put all of the different franchises in a block together. So we'll do all the Hellraisers. At some point we'll do all the Child's Play, and we won't do the movies I reviewed in between. Well, I think we're starting off pretty strong with this list with Hellraiser. I'm at least going to put it up in the S tier. There's the potential for it to move down to the A tier. I do think there are little bits in Hellraiser that haven't aged very well. Like the engineer looks pretty goofy and just some of the effects don't look great, but aside from that, it has such a great mood and atmosphere. It really makes the Cenobites so scary, and it really starts what could have been a really great franchise. It goes down the hill really, really quickly. But I think for now, I think it's earned its spot as nearly a masterpiece. So up next, we've got Hellbound Hellraiser 2. Those of you who are around early in my channel or have watched my Hellraiser reviews, you know I'm not crazy about it. I think it made some weird decisions, and those decisions are a big reason why the Hellraiser franchise becomes such a garbage fire so quickly. That being said, it has a really strong first half. It starts to lose it once they actually enter the labyrinth, and that's when the whole thing kind of becomes a cheesy mess. So all of that said, I think I'm going to stick Hellbound in the B tier. Hellraiser 3. I feel like this one is going to be a controversial pick, but I'm also going to put it up in B with Hellbound. I think it still has its issues. It's way cheaper looking than the other 2 films, but I love those stupid 90s Cenobites and their stupid little gags. I just think it's a lot of fun. Then we've got Hellraiser Bloodlines, and I'm going to put this down in C tier for now. I think same issues that Hellraiser 3 has, but to a stronger degree. It looks cheap, really cheap, especially in the space station. I do appreciate the really grandiose vision they had for this film, and if it really had like $10 million more behind it, maybe it could have been really cool, but it just feels pretty dated. It does still have some of that great Pinhead dialogue from Hellraiser 3, so that's awesome, but I don't think I can say it's any better than a C tier movie. Then we've got Hellraiser Inferno, and we're continuing this downward trend. I'm going to give it a D. It's not quite an F tier movie, but it's the first straight to video. It's the first spec script, and it feels like it. It's a pretty generic cop storyline with Cenobites woven in there. Better than some of the other sequels, but still not great. It has a few memorable ones like Torso and the Wire Twins, so it has some really cool visuals, but aside from that, there isn't a ton of reason you should go and watch Hellraiser Inferno. And now we're here at a big bunch of F-bombs. Fuck all of these movies. They're not worth your time at all. So we've got Hellseeker, Deader, Hellworld, and Revelations. If I was gonna say watch any of them, it would be Deader and Hellworld, but only do that if you're really looking for a not good movie to watch. Otherwise, skip all of them. Stick with the original 4, and you're gonna be still having a decent time. Hellseeker really butchers the character of Kirsty Cotton and really relies on fake outs, as do Deader and Hellworld. Deader, I think, is the best out of these, so I'm gonna put it up here. But none of them are really great. They all feel straight to video like a lot. This one at least has the cool setting in Eastern Europe, but that's about it. Revelations is the worst by quite a bit. It just feels so mean-spirited, which is really weird to say when it's the Hellraiser franchise, but if you've seen it, you probably know what I mean. It's a really unpleasant film to watch, and maybe for some people that makes it more successful than a lot of these, but for me, it's just not a movie I want to watch. The acting is awful. It's atrocious, though probably the worst acting in this whole list. Maybe I'm blanking on one movie, but really, really bad stuff. Then we've got Judgment. I'm gonna put Hellraiser Judgment D tier as well. It's better than the D's by a good amount, but I don't think it's somewhere between those and Inferno. It is a decent, I can't even say it's a return to form, but it's an improvement. It's an improvement on these, but it's not much more than that. It has some cool aspects. I really like the Inquisitor, is that what he's called? Sunglasses Scarface guy who runs the Inquisition. But aside from that, it's a big vomit fest. It's really gross. It's a really gross movie. And then the rest of it really just steals the plot of Seven with a killer killing based off the 7 deadly sins. So a lot of originality there. So yeah, that's the Hellraiser franchise. It's not great. We're already really lopsided here. Let's see if we can turn that around with some of the but the individual movies that I've watched. So the first non-Hellraiser film I covered on the channel, it was Halloween season, and I appropriately covered Trick or Treat. So Trick or Treat's a lot of fun. It's a movie I really enjoy. It's got a lot of really fun characters. Obviously, Sam is the most enjoyable. He's really cute, but also really scary. But I love a lot of the little vignette stories that are going on, but it's great that they all loop together by the end for the most part. And yeah, it's not a movie I seek out often, but I watch it pretty much every Halloween. Maybe I skip every other year, but it's a really fun movie for the Halloween season. That's what it's built for. I think it's really successful at that. I'm gonna put it in the B tier, and I think I'm gonna put it above the Hellraiser films. I think it's pretty successful at what it's trying to do. I wouldn't say it's a really great film or a masterpiece or anything like that, but it's a very fun, spooky Halloween movie. Then up next we have The Void, which I think is a really fun movie. I want to say it's from 2017 or 2018, something like that, and it takes a ton of influence from things like Hellraiser as well as a lot of John Carpenter. It's got some Halloween 2 in there. I'd say it's even got some of The Fog in there. So I'm going to say it's also a B tier movie. I'm going to go ahead and put it, at least for right now, I'm going to put it after the Hellraiser films. It's a really fun film. Fun's a weird word. It's actually a really dark, depressing, intense movie, but yeah, I think it's got some really cool monster effects. If you haven't watched The Void, definitely go do it. But it does feel like a low-budget horror movie, so it's hard to break out of that at points. Like the limitations of their practical effects are sometimes kind of evident, and it also ends on a pretty indecisive note, I guess I would say. Very ambiguous. I would say too ambiguous, and for that reason, I'm going to keep it in the B section. Up next is The Ritual, which was, I don't think it was a Netflix original movie, if it was, it's one of their very best. I think it's a fantastic modern horror movie. It's got a really cool monster, and just a really great group of characters. It's a small group of guys that go camping in Norway, I want to say, and they make a shortcut through the woods that doesn't go well. I'll leave it there, but really awesome movie, really awesome monster, and just really great use of the main character's trauma, of Luke's trauma, of something that happens to him a little bit before the trip. And it's really, the visuals integrate really well, and I don't want a sequel, I know it'd ruin it, but I would love to see more of that creature. Okay, up next we've got Jack Frost, and I cannot justify putting this anywhere except for the F section. It's a fun horror movie mostly. Most of the time it's fun, but it's still not really good. It's very slow. The snowman puppet is not good at all, and the one-liners just really don't work. So it's really only if it's Christmas time, you want a schlocky horror movie to put on, Jack Frost might be good for you, but aside from that, it's not going to do much for anybody. The acting is really bad. Cinematography is god awful. Yeah, not a lot of great in Jack Frost. That being said, I think it's better than these three Hellraisers, but I'd say Deader has it beat by just a bit, just because Jack Frost is fun, whereas I'd say these movies are not fun at all to watch. Oh, and I am going to put Hellworld above Hellseeker. I hate Hellseeker. There we go. Alright, so The Thing's going to go into the F tier. I bet that joke did not land at all. It's going, of course, up to S. Spoiler alert to everyone, this is probably going to be the tippy top of the list. The Thing is my favorite horror movie, aside from maybe the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, so there's not a ton to really say here. It's so fantastic. The Thing is an absolute masterpiece. I would say John Carpenter's best film. That might be debatable, but such a great cast of characters, and it's so impressive because it's such a large ensemble cast, but the Antarctic setting is so good. You get such a great idea of the layout of the station while everything builds up. The effects are obviously revolutionary, and yeah, The Thing is amazing. So up next we've got Rare Exports, A Christmas Tale. I think this section's getting pretty big. I think I'm gonna also put Rare Exports in the B section. I think it's really good for what it is. It's got a lot of heart. It's a really sweet horror movie, interestingly enough. It's got a lot of great bonding happening between a father and son. The Santa is creepy as hell, and I love the hordes of naked Santas at the end, even though they're obviously CGI. That being said, it's a really short horror movie. It's only a teeny bit over an hour long, and I ultimately wish we could have seen a little bit of the giant Santa Claus monster that was in the ice. So yeah, I think for right now I'm gonna put it here in the B section. All right, up next, Black Christmas, S tier. Halloween gets all the credit for making the slasher genre. Black Christmas did it first. Obviously there were films before Black Christmas, but I almost enjoy Black Christmas more than I do Halloween, which is really interesting. I don't think many people would agree with me on that, but Billy on the phone is literally so scary. I think it's the single best execution of a villain or some sort of entity on a phone in horror. I don't think Billy has ever been topped in that manner, so yeah, great movie. All right, now we've hit the Child's Play franchise. This is a very fun franchise, one of the most consistent that we're going to see on the channel today. And along with that, I'm going to go ahead and put Child's Play in the S tier. I mean, it's Chucky, come on. I'm probably going to put it... So I think I'm going to move these around a little bit. I think I'm going to do this. Yeah, I think that makes sense to me. Child's Play, I'd say, is a bit stronger than Hellraiser. I think it just feels a bit more finished in a way. Tom Holland did a great job with the film. There's so much great buildup of Chucky slowly revealing that he's animate, and yeah, the effects once he actually comes to life are so cool. And I would say, even though it was late 80s, still revolutionary for that time. Some of the best animatronics work ever, at least going into the franchise there will be. So yeah, really great. So many iconic lines, and that leads me into Child's Play 2, which, interestingly enough, I'm going to put down in the A section. Those of you who've seen my Chucky rankings, you'll know I actually prefer 2 over 1, but when considering it in this kind of fashion, I am gonna give the nod to the original over the sequel, but Child's Play 2 is so great. It gives so much more personality to Chucky. This is where he really becomes the character that we know him as. Some of his most iconic lines are in here, and some of his best kills are in here as well. So it already had a lot built up from the original that allowed it to be so great. So for that reason, I'm gonna put it in A, but really great sequel. Then we're coming to Child's Play 3, and it's not a bad movie, but I do think it's the most redundant and the least exciting out of the whole franchise, and the least yeah, I guess that means redundant as well, but I'm gonna put it in C for now. Guys, I don't know, it's Child's Play 3. It's the least necessary to watch out of any of them if you're gonna binge the franchise. I guess it's sort of necessary to understand some stuff in Cult of Chucky, but it's really not. Chucky looks a bit cheaper than he did before. You don't have the OG Andy coming back. The military background is really cliche, and some people really like the carnival ending, but for me it just feels so out of left field it doesn't really work. So yeah, I think it's gonna be a C tier horror movie, better than all these crappy Hellraisers, but yeah, still just kind of like a mid-tier sequel. Then we've got Bride of Chucky, and that's gonna be, it's gonna be a B tier, I'd say. Better than Child's Play 3 by a good margin, but I wouldn't say it's quite Child's Play 2 level. That being said, I'm gonna stick it, I think that makes sense, and then I'm gonna move the Hellraisers back. I think that makes sense. Yeah, Bride of Chucky is a ton of fun. It revitalized the franchise to fit the 90s after Scream came out and blew everything back up, and so much fun dialogue. Tiffany is a fantastic addition to the franchise. Such a smart way to give Chucky a foil, whereas the only people he had to talk to before were his victims. Now he actually has a partner in crime, and a lot of fun. Jesse and Jade are very graining protagonists, and I think they're the reason the movie really isn't up in the A section with Child's Play 2, but still a really fun horror movie, and I'd say I can completely understand if it is your favorite. Chucky, I think, looks his absolute best here. Those animatronics are so cool and look so good. I'm sure some people think the scars and everything are a little tryhard. I think they're badass. I think they're really awesome. Then we've got Seed of Chucky. I'm going to put Seed in the C tier, I think, for obvious reasons. I'm going to say it's more interesting than Child's Play 3. Yeah, this is where the dolls start to look pretty cheap. The animatronics just aren't as capable of what they used to be, which is unfortunate. Glenn and Glenda, it's a very fun new twist to add to the mix, because everyone was really expecting Chucky to have a son. That was the expected status quo, and it's very interesting watching the film tackle gender and gender dysphoria, but it ultimately isn't the best look into that subject matter. It's done a bit tastelessly, and there's a reason Glenn and Glenda have not come back. I think they'll be coming back for season 2 of the Chucky series, so I'm very interested to see what that character has become. But yeah, overall, Seed of Chucky, too many celebrities, too many little weird celebrity gags. The addiction subplot is kind of funny, but there's not a ton to love here. You get John Waters getting his face melted, that's fun, but I would say another mid-tier horror sequel, which isn't a bad place to be once you're, 4 or 5 movies in. Then we've got Curse of Chucky, which I think is still gonna go in C tier. Chucky still looks a little bit cheap, and I really appreciate that they went for like a slow burn. I'm sure for some people this was probably the first Chucky movie they ever watched if they were just growing up and it came on TV or something like that. The slow burn was probably exciting, but for me, I don't need a slow burn to know Chucky is alive 6 movies in. That just seems unnecessary to me. It is a big step up in things like the cinematography and whatnot from Seed of Chucky. This is where Don Mancini started to show a lot of growth, but some of the kills look a bit cheap. It's not the best. There's a lot of CGI blood, so little things like that I think are going to keep it from going any higher. But then we've got Cult of Chucky, which is one of my underrated favorites in the franchise. Still not a perfect movie by any means. I don't love the insane asylum setting. I think it's pretty generic, but I do think there's a lot of great stuff happening between Nika and Chucky in this movie, and just the multiple Chuckies. That's really all I have to say. You've got more than one Chucky running around. Once there's 3 on screen, and you've just got Brad Dourif vibing with himself via dolls. I mean, that's great. I love it. I think I'm gonna put it, and it might be the end of B tier. I'll think about that. I'm gonna think about that for a little bit. Ugh, this is a garbage movie. This is such a waste of time. I'm gonna put it in D tier because it is a well-made movie, I guess you can say, but just a soulless cash grab. Like, I don't have a problem with reboots and remakes when it's some franchise that's been dead for years, or it's some one-off movie no one gives a fuck about, but Child's Play was actively making movies and a TV show, and this was just here to steal money from them and to steal attention away from those other Chucky endeavors, and I don't like it. So I won't put it in the F tier, but it's one of my most hated movies on this list, actually. It's not funny, it's not cool, it's not some great new take on technology. Like, Videodrome and things like that have existed for literal decades. We get it, technology's scary. AI doll, fuck you. Here we've got one of the more interesting movies on the list, I'd say Banshee Chapter. I'm gonna say that's a B tier movie as well. Where am I putting you? Yeah, I think this is, unless there's one I'm forgetting. Oh, it's not, there's Creep, I guess, but one of the only found footage horror movies on the list, and yeah, it's got a really great performance by Ted Levine. He's a lot of fun as this weird outsider guy living on a ranch, but really the best moments of the film are like when there's just a glimpse of a creature and you only get a little bit of a look at it. The effects don't really hold up when you get a great look at them, but I really think it builds up a lot of tension in there and really immerses you in the space with the shaky camera movements as you're looking around, and yeah, and really great use of the sound design, and yeah, just a solid movie. I do think the low budget can be evident with some of the effects, but I still think Banshee Chapter is a lot of fun. If you're into Lovecraftian horror but want an interesting, unique take, I would definitely check it out. Now we've got one of my new favorites. So I had never seen From Beyond before my patron Lee requested me to cover it, and man, I am so grateful that he did. It's going straight to S tier. I think it's gonna go. Man, I don't know if I could put it over Hellraiser and Child's Play. Fuck it, I'm going to. Such a fun horror movie. Oh my gosh. I like this better than Re-Animator, I have to say. This is my favorite Stuart Gordon film, at least out of the ones I've seen. Just so much fun. The character of Pretorius makes such a funny monster, and just the actual practical effects they use for some of these monsters is so much fun. Don't even get me started on those dumplings. Dan, you know what I'm talking about. Just, yeah, such an interesting, weird movie. It makes sense in the Stuart Gordon scope of films, but aside from that, like, it's just a weird horror movie. And I mean that in the best way possible. It's such a funky film, so much fun, such a fun color palette. Just like Re-Animator, you've got Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton, and I think they both give fantastic performances here. I like that Barbara Crampton's character has a bit more agency this time around. Then of course you have Ken Foray, and his character is a lot of fun as well. He's like the good, like, moral middle point between the two characters completely losing themselves, and yeah. It's a funky film. It's not like a horror, like a truly thrilling, unsettling horror, but it's really fun and one of my new favorites. Up next, we've got Fright Night, and man, I think I've got to put this in the S tier as well. Just a really great vampire film. It's my personal favorite vampire film. I think it's got a great mix of the horror and the comedy. some really iconic scenes. Chris Sarandon is just such a great vampire. He was built for this role, and yeah, just so much fun. Man, I think same for The Wailing. I may end up moving it down to the A tier, we'll see, but South Korean horror is just really, really strong. They have been pumping out masterpieces over the past 10 or so years, and The Wailing is just one example of that. Just a really great, mysterious, slow burn, and it takes a long time to figure out what's going on in a good way, but even by the end, there's a lot of ambiguity that leaves you able to actually guess some of the motivations of the characters, but it's never outright said to you, and I really love that about it. But the evil in the film feels so real and so down to earth isn't the right way to say it, but it feels like ancient in a very interesting way. And yeah, I really enjoy The Wailing. Oh, darn, this thing is, The Mist is almost an S tier. I'm gonna put it in A tier. I'm gonna put it maybe above Child's Play 2. I mean, that ending, obviously the ending is so impactful, and I think a really great example of a bleak ending done well. That is just a killer ending, but there's so much more to it than that. The isolated setting is so good, and then of course, the biggest monsters in that store are not the monsters outside. They are the people inside slowly losing it and becoming radicalized. And yeah, Mrs. Carmody is just terrifying in that role and so infuriating. And yeah, it's a great mix of being scared of the monsters, but also furious at the human characters. But yeah, Frank Darabont is a surprisingly great director. It's great seeing a bunch of Walking Dead actors in here, and yeah, I won't put it in the S tier because it feels just a little bit dated because of the CGI. It's kind of hard to look past at times, but aside from that, I think it's a really great horror film and a really great creature feature, and one of the best Stephen King adaptations we've ever gotten. Okay, up next we've got a 1980 classic with Prom Night, and I'm putting Prom Night in the C tier. It's just, I don't know, I think it's pretty dull. It's kind of slow. Yeah, it takes more than like halfway through the movie for the killer to start killing, and even then it's not super unique. It's a lot of really long chase sequences that are trying to build up tension, but then the kill itself is very lackluster and all of that tension dissipates. I'm specifically thinking about one, and I don't remember the character's name, but where she ends up running throughout the school, and then she ends up in a closet, and then it takes forever. It's like a 15-minute chase scene, and just nothing worth it comes of that. You of course get the bully's head chopped off and it rolls down the stage. That's really great, but aside from that, I think it didn't do a ton to the genre. It didn't do a ton new. I would say the killer is maybe one of the first sympathetic slashers, but aside from that, it's an okay slasher. I think you can do a lot better, though. Ugh, Victor, I'm sorry, I have to put I Know Who Killed Me probably in the D tier. I'll put it at the top of the D tier. I can certainly do that. It's better than these films, but it is a confused movie. It's a confused movie for sure. Lindsay Lohan, I think, does a fine job. She honestly is not any part of the issue here. It's just, I've had so many people on my review of this ask about the twins and ask, are there two twins? Is it one character? And well, after going through it, I understand the story. It's clear that the plot itself was not explained well enough for people to understand this movie, and I think that's part of the issue. It's just very confused, and it ends up being confusing because of it. The killer is just really, really far out of left field. It's not like it's a character that was integral to the plot in any way, so it doesn't hit you in any interesting way. It's just, oh, it's that guy. Interesting, okay. But yeah, it's got some fun scenes. It tries to be interesting with the cinematography and whatnot. I don't even say it's very successful, but it's an ambitious film. I give them credit for really swinging for the fences, but I don't think it can go much higher than D. Maybe I'll end up putting it in low C. We'll see, though. Up next, we've got 7. Ooh, I'm gonna put 7. I'm gonna put 7 in the A tier for right now because S is getting a bit too big. I may have to pull a couple down because I want S to feel special, but I'm gonna put it top of A right now. It's a really great neo-noir. All the performances in it are fantastic. Like that's an S tier cast for sure. And while I feel like the premise of the 7 Deadly Sin based killer is now very cliche, it's because 7 made it so cool that so many movies wanted to try to copy it. So yeah, really impactful movie, one of the rare impactful ones of the 90s, I would say. And yeah, 7 is a lot of fun and yeah, has such a great environment to it. So yeah, really great movie. Up next, we've got The Taking of Deborah Logan. Damn, B is gonna be the biggest group, I think. I think I've covered a lot of B tier movies on the channel. And yeah, I think Deborah Logan's gonna go... This feels about right. I think that's fair. Yeah, I think it does a great job of playing off most audiences' preconceived notion of what the story's gonna be. Oh, this lady has dementia, she's crazy, which a lot of horror movies do. It's very distasteful and just, yeah, not a fun kind of movie to watch, but this actually takes it to a very interesting place, and I really appreciate that kind of twist you get near the 3/4 marker whenever it's kind of revealed. But yeah, well, no, yeah, it is another found footage too. There's not a ton on here, but the ones I have covered are doing well so far. But yeah, you feel really bad for Deborah herself and the daughter. The main character, her character is lacking a bit. There isn't much of her for us to like root for or hold on to. But yeah, overall, I think it's a very successful film and definitely one to check out. Oh, nice. Now we're getting to the summer of creature features. Slither's an A for sure. Might be my single favorite horror comedy. If you're counting From Beyond, maybe not, but really, really fun. I'm gonna put it here. I think that feels right to me, but so much fun. It obviously takes a lot of influence from Carpenter, Cronenberg, a lot of other directors. There's so many little nods to other horror movies within it, but yeah, it's one of the funnier films on the list for sure, and just such great effects. Michael Rooker makes a fantastic monster, and I really commend him for the ridiculous effects he was willing to wear for hours on end, and yeah, just a lot of great stuff here. It's got those trauma roots in it, so it's gross, it's funny, it's crude, but it also has like that more polished James Gunn feeling to it, so just a really fun all-around movie. I feel a little bit funny having Jurassic Park on here, but since I do, it's gotta go in the S tier. Man, I feel it's like it is a horror movie, but it's also not. I'm gonna put it just bottom of S tier. If we were talking about like filmmaking in general, Jurassic Park would be near the tippy top, but I want to put more emphasis on some of the scarier movies and some of the maybe smaller budget films, because Jurassic Park had a huge budget. It's Steven Spielberg, but obviously it's like a masterpiece and a fantastic film. Those dinosaurs still look fantastic today, and that T-Rex, I'm sure at the time, was terrifying. I remember seeing ads for, I guess it wouldn't have been the original, but at least for some of the sequels, and probably even for some of the theme parks happening, and being scared of the T-Rex. So definitely very effective, but for the sake of this list, I'm gonna have it bottom of S tier, even though it is a masterpiece. Creature feature that's not quite a masterpiece, I'm gonna say is Black Sheep. Black Sheep, I'm gonna say, is a C tier movie. It's not bad. Like when the sheep are on screen, it's fantastic. But when the sheep are not on screen, it's a very draining movie. This is a less funny movie. You think of the humor of Slither being successful, the humor of Black Sheep is way less successful. The characters are all really, really annoying, especially the vegan character, just very annoying to deal with and listen to their jokes, and their jokes just interfere with the plot instead of being intertwined with them. But yeah, when the sheep are on screen, it's great. The final monster is a ton of fun, so some great effects in there, but Unfortunately, I think it's bogged down by not being very funny. Sharkman or Hammerhead. I think this has to be the dead last movie on this whole list. It's the only sci-fi original that I've covered because I had some childhood nostalgia for it, and boy, my nostalgia let me down. It's just really, really cheap, bad acting, really bad cinematography. The monster is literally like 3-second close-ups of it, and it's just crappy CGI or a really not great looking suit. So could have had potential, but unfortunately it is what it is. Then we've got Zombievers. I think once again I'm gonna put Zombievers in C tier. It's also once again pretty low budget. I think the comedy is okay. There's some things that aren't as funny. I think I'm gonna put it top of C tier though. The beavers don't look fantastic, but they're still fun. They have a charm to them, and the characters are okay. They're harder to root for. There's a few likable characters. The most likable character dies really early on, very unceremoniously, so you're left with kind of like these shitty characters who are like really horny and they're cheating on each other, and obviously it's just to show you're not really supposed to root for any of them. You're rooting for the beavers, but it still doesn't give you a ton to care about when the beavers aren't on screen. But still a fun horror movie for sure. A very fun creature feature, a good summertime movie. Ooh, up next we have Cujo. I'm gonna keep Cujo in the A tier. I'm gonna put Cujo. I'm gonna put Cujo here. I think I feel like a decent spot for him. Scariest dog in a horror movie, I'd say. Fantastic dog acting, fantastic man in dog puppet acting, and things like that as well. The claustrophobic nature of once they're actually stuck in that hot car is fantastic. I do think it's a little bit slow to start, which isn't awful. It's good to see Cujo like slowly devolving into a monster, but there's also the subplot with the husband and potential affair and everything going on with that, and that just feels really like a waste of time because the husband ultimately ends up being a complete non-factor in the film. So you could have just cut him out of the scenes in general, and it would have been a slimmer, trimmer horror movie with less wasted time. But still, that little boy Tad is so fragile seeming. You really worry for him, especially near the end. And this is another example of a Stephen King ending that was changed, but this one is less bleak, and this is an example where I think that was a good decision as well. But yeah, overall Cujo is a really good creature feature as well, and yeah, definitely a classic. All right, Jaws, S tier for you as well. You're more straightforward to horror. You're still Spielberg, but a very important horror movie. You terrified people for so long. People stayed out of the water because of you. I can't really argue anything against you being an S tier movie. Fantastic performances, fantastic setting on that boat, fantastic animatronic. The less is more approach works so well. That opening scene, oh my gosh, so good. And yeah, just great dive into the three characters on the boat, and it's a shame they tried to make sequels for it. Ooh, this might be a bit of a hot take here, but Pumpkinhead is going in the S tier. I don't care what anybody has to say. I'll put it in bottom of the S tier because it might not be the most influential horror movie, but I think it is really a slept-on film. Such a great performance by Lance Henriksen. He really encapsulates the rage of a father who has just suffered extreme loss, and it also has victims that are mostly sympathetic. You feel bad for most of these kids because it was an accident, and there's one character really setting the whole group back, and so it is sad watching them meet their end. But Pumpkinhead is one of the coolest practical effects of all time. Stan Winston did a fantastic job both making it and then directing the film. I'm so glad he took on this and made a movie mostly for himself. I don't think he directed many after this, but such a cool creature. The slow transformation of it looking more like Lance Henriksen's character is just so awesome. And yeah, once again, it's a shame that the sequels dipped in quality so much, because I think it's a really cool monster. And Pumpkinhead is a movie that should really get a great modern revamping. I think it could be done really well. Now we've got Creep. Creep is definitely an A tier. I love Creep. I'm gonna put it... That seems good to me. Creep is such an off-kilter horror movie. It's just so unsettling. It's an uncomfortable film. Just, yeah, a weird one to watch. The first time I watched it, I was just in a group with random friends. We all threw it on. We were all just like staring at the screen in like this weird awe of like, what the fuck are we watching? What is gonna happen next? And it just keeps adding pressure and adding absurdity, and yeah, fantastic one. I think the sequel's pretty solid too. I haven't covered it on the channel, but yeah, I believe they're working on a third, and yeah, I'm excited to see where Joseph's adventures go in the future. Alright, now we've hit the Halloween franchise. Halloween's obviously going to be S tier. I'm going to put it number 2. Created the slasher boom. Michael Myers is an absolute icon, and this is the best movie in the franchise, in my opinion, by quite a bit. It is just such a great atmosphere, such great performances. Jamie Lee Curtis, Donald Pleasance, especially Donald Pleasance in this one, gives some outstanding monologues that really help us understand Michael, and then just the cinematography John Carpenter gets, making Michael just be really far away in the darkness or just be in a shadow, and he slowly appears. He's so great, and this Michael has a little bit of urgency, which I prefer over the very slow Michael. That loses me a bit, but yeah, Halloween is nearly a perfect film, a fantastic slasher, one of the best you could possibly ask for. Then we've got Halloween 2. I'm going to say Halloween 2 is an A tier movie. I'm going to put it bottom of A tier just because I know all of these are original films. I feel like it's harder to put a sequel above some more original concepts, but definitely an A film. It very successfully captures the essence of the first Halloween. It adds a little bit more of that slasher flair to compete with movies like Friday the 13th, Prom Night, things like that were coming out at the time to amp up that violence. But the hospital setting is really iconic. The characters are okay, but I really love the first quarter, the first half, where Michael is kind of randomly roaming through Haddonfield and just killing at random. That's when I think Michael is the most scary, and I wish it just would have been that the whole movie, but you get what you get. I don't love the sibling decision, but once again, you get what you get. They had to give Michael a purpose at this point, I guess, but oh well. Still a great Halloween movie for sure, and it makes a great double feature with the original. Okay, we've got another divisive film here, Season of the Witch. I'm going to put Season of the Witch at B tier, and actually, held down. That feels like a good place for it. Next to Trick or Treat seems appropriate, if you ask me. I've got lots of pumpkins going on in the front of B tier, but yeah. Not everyone loves Halloween 3. I can understand why. It's an odd film, but I still think it's the oddity to me is what makes it so compelling. Still got some great cinematography, some really standout scenes. The androids are really weird. Just everything about the Mask Factory, the evil Irishman, Stonehenge. It's a weird movie, and it's a good Halloween movie, just like Trick or Treat is. And yeah, it's not the masterpiece that some people argue it is. It's not the best of the franchise by any means, but still a very fun niche horror movie. Great for the spooky season. Ooh, Halloween 4. I think Halloween 4 is going to be the top of B tier. I think that this rivals Halloween 2 in quality. I'd say it's not as good as Halloween 2, but it's the closest I think any of the next sequels get to capturing that. Michael looks ridiculous in that stupid ass mask, yes, but aside from that, I think it's a really successful story. Jamie Lloyd is a really sympathetic character, and you really root for her and really are worried for her throughout that whole film as Michael is slowly searching for her. This might be my favorite Dr. Loomis. His monologues are going more off kilter, but he's not batshit crazy yet. But the Abe Lincoln Diner, certain little weird scenes like that really have a special place in my heart, and I really enjoy Halloween 4. Then we have Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. This might upset a few people. Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers is going in the F tier. It's stupid. Everything is stupid. You've got the stupid man in black just coming out of nowhere, shooting up the police station. Michael escapes, takes Jamie or whatever, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's just such a stupid, weird cliffhanger. And this is the movie, this is the reason we get cursed, and this is why we just deviate so far from what Michael Myers used to be. It's just so stupid. It has some of that original Halloween spirit, if you want to call it that, but it's just not as good as any of the others, and it's the reason this franchise becomes such a mess. Before this, I'd say it was pretty solid, despite having one weird Halloween mask non-entry with part 3, but 4 was a great return to form, and then 5 really just ruined that. Jamie's a mute, and that's just stupid. Just so much weird stuff going on in Halloween 5, and I genuinely don't enjoy it. It's probably the movie I hate most out of this franchise. It's not technically the worst, I could argue, but it's my least favorite. So then we have the offspring of Revenge, which is Curse of Michael Myers, and it's a D horror movie. I'll put it here. That seems fine. I don't really care. But yeah, it just really goes straight into the cult stuff, which is kind of fun. At least it has the cojones to go there, but it's not what I want out of a Michael Myers movie. It's not something I ever return to unless I'm doing a franchise binge. It's not a fun movie. Jamie Lloyd, this little girl we watched grow up through the first 2 movies, is now an adult, or not even adult, she's like 16, I think. She's a rape victim, and then she gets murdered by Michael, who's the one who raped her. Like, what are we supposed to be rooting for here? It's just fucking weird. Once you get past that opening, it's weirdly entertaining. Michael is a bit better in this one, but still just not a fun movie to watch. H2O is a decent return to form, but it's still not a movie I want to watch. Like, it just feels like very mundane to me. Very 90s. I think it might be, I forget if it's post-Scream or pre-Scream, but either way, it feels like one of those Scream-esque movies that just, I don't know, I don't care for. Scream did its thing really well. The movies that tried to be Scream did not do it well, almost 99% of the time. Too much humor, too quippy, not enough actual violence most of the time. There's one really good kill when it's the one girl being stabbed in the back while on the ground. That one is really like effective. It's very heart-wrenching in a way, even though it's just a side character, but yeah, just kind of a pointless movie. It's just a weird thing to be like Halloween 20 years later. It's the beginning of these weird sequels that ignore the other sequels, and just a strange thing for the Halloween franchise to become. So I think C tier is a fine place for H2O. Bless Halloween Resurrection, but it's still going in the F tier. I don't think I can put it above 5 as much as I hate 5. I'm gonna put it next to Hellworld because they're kind of a similar vibe, but yeah, just an interesting use of technology that they thought was going to be cutting edge, but it just is so dated, and it's just an unpleasant movie to watch because you're just watching it through these crappy camcorders most of the time. It just looks bad. It's all shaky and not in any sort of effective way. Michael looks pretty goofy once again, and yeah, still quippy. It's very post-Scream at this point, and you've got Busta Rhymes, Tyra Banks, Jamie Lee gets killed off in the first 10 minutes. It's just not a worthwhile endeavor. Now we've got Rob Zombie's Halloween, and I'm gonna say, once again, this is probably a C tier. I'm gonna put it right behind, maybe top of C tier. I think that makes sense. Yeah. This one is, I have mixed feelings about Rob Zombie's Halloween. I think that it's got some good, it's got some bad, but for me the bad mostly outweighs the good. I don't like watching Michael Myers as a child. I understand Rob was going for a more realistic look at a psychopath and what makes one, and that's interesting, but it's been done plenty of times before, and similar to how I'll talk about Hannibal Lecter in a little bit, what I find so interesting about Michael Myers is the lack of purpose, the lack of reason. He's just this evil force, and there's no real reason for what he does, and that's what I love about the original Halloween so much. It loses it literally at Halloween 2 when they make the sibling purpose, but yeah, I think there's just not a lot of ambiguity in why Michael's killing. He was abused as a child, lived an awful life, and then was institutionalized, and he gets out and he kills a bunch of people very brutally. And I think the kills themselves are really well done. There's some real emotional weight when some characters actually get axed, which I really appreciate. Scout Taylor Compton gives a very good performance as Laurie Strode, and I think, yeah, does a great job in that role. But overall, it's just a mixed bag for me. I think it just spends way too much time with Michael as a child, and it leaves the second half feeling very, very rushed. Now we've got Rob Zombie's Halloween 2, and yeah, this one's an F tier. Sorry, Rob. It's just not something I ever want to watch. It's just too much Rob Zombie at this point. It feels like a music video half the time. Michael Myers is just roaming through the woods and through wheat fields for a lot of the time, just killing really random people on his way back to Haddonfield. It's very purposeless. I do not care for the mental illness and or psychic connection that she and Michael have with their mom. It just makes no sense to me. It's really stupid. The white horse thing going on, it's just so much stupid stuff in this movie. I understand if you like it a bit more, if you really like it, I guess it's a unique film within the franchise, but just not what I want out of this franchise or out of any movie, really. Up next, we have Halloween 2018. Another C-tier movie. The Halloween, it's fine. It's a fine movie. Some people really like this one. I don't. People really like to bash Halloween Kills. I think this movie has all the same problems of Halloween Kills. The dialogue sometimes is so stupid. I hate the direction they've taken Laurie Strode as this introverted badass hermit who just lives in the wood and is completely traumatized by one, albeit terrifying, night she had, but it was one night, and in this universe he was caught that night. So her lifestyle to me just seems so overly dramatic. If they had kept things like H2O in, if they had kept the sibling thing, it might have made more sense to me, but her fear is just completely unjustified. It's just a weird place to take the character. There are some cool moments in it. Michael looks fantastic. James Jude Courtney might be the best Michael Myers we've ever had, but yeah, just some weird stuff in here that doesn't quite work for me. And yeah, I think it's a decent movie, but I don't think it's I don't like it nearly as much as I like The Return of Michael Myers. There's a big drop in quality for me there. Alright, so now we've got Halloween Kills, which I actually haven't made a full review and breakdown of, but I did a small spoiler-free review back when it came out. I'll be doing a full review later this year, so keep an eye out for that. But y'all know that I enjoyed it. I like it better than Halloween 2018. I'm going to put it, and I'm going to keep it bottom of B tier. With that being said, I do enjoy it a lot more. I think a lot of the humor in it works for me. It's got a lot of weird side characters, and I really like getting to know these random weird-ass people who live in Haddonfield, and then we watch them get killed off very dramatically and often very emotionally. This is the only Halloween movie where I've consistently felt bad for the people that are the victims of Michael. That's a hard thing to do. I think it does it very well. Yeah, there are certain things that don't work. I don't argue the dialogue is stupid. Evil Dies Tonight is just so cringy. There's a lot of cringy dialogue in here. Yeah, I can understand if you have it lower on this list. I definitely do, but for me, I think low B tier is a fine place for it. That could change with whatever happens in Halloween Ends, but for me, I think it's a fine middle part for this franchise. It's a fine way to get from point A to point C, but hopefully it all pans out with the end of this trilogy, so we'll see. All right, up next we've got Dark City. This is another weird one to place on this list. It's really good for what it is. It's like only vaguely a horror movie. It's horror tangential, I would say, more so than it is an actual horror movie, but that being said, it's got a neo-noir feeling, but a lot of sci-fi in there, some great effects for the time. It's crazy that this came out like right at the same time as The Matrix, and they do some similar things, but yeah, really solid. I'm gonna put it in A tier, but yeah, and I'm gonna put it bottom of A tier only because it's only very tangentially related to horror, but some really great performances in here. Yeah, it's got a star-studded cast as well. So yeah, Dark City is definitely one to check out, but don't expect it to be like a straight sci-fi horror or anything like that. It is more of like a neo-noir than anything else. Ooh, Sleepaway Camp. This might upset some people. I'm gonna put it in A as well. I think I'm gonna do high A. I'll put it. That feels fine to me. Yeah, Sleepaway Camp is not a great film in reality, but it's not so bad it's good, but it's bad is so enjoyable. The dialogue is so hilarious. The kid actors are so much fun to watch. It's just got such a stupid, weird charm to it. And yeah, the ending is somewhat problematic, but still a very iconic ending. Still, yeah, people are so shocked by the first time they see this film. It comes out of left field, but in such a good way. It's explained just enough for it to make sense, but it's still just so surprising. And the kills are surprisingly good in here. Pretty rare, but there's like some good gore effects in here. And this is another franchise that takes a weird turn, but also still in a fairly enjoyable way, but none of them really touch Sleepaway Camp on its own. Up next, we've got Skull, the Mask of Anhanga, and I'm gonna put this one probably in C tier. Yeah, I think that makes sense. I'll put it high C tier. So yeah, this one's interesting. I think it's the first Central American horror movie. Yeah, it's the only Central American horror movie that I've covered on the channel, and there's good things and bad things about that. I certainly don't mind it being in Spanish, but it does have a pretty limited budget, and I think there were certain limitations with certain things, like some of the visual effects. Oh, they do some great things with what they were able to, but it still feels like a pretty like mid-grade slasher. It starts off very interesting with the skull mask attacking people, but then at a certain point it just latches onto a guy, and then he's essentially Jason Voorhees. So still a fun movie. I think if you haven't seen it, I would recommend it, but I wouldn't call it a masterpiece or anything like that. But yeah, still some very fun kills in here. It's definitely like, if you love slashers, I definitely recommend it. It's a slasher fans slasher movie for sure. Ooh, up next is Event Horizon, and I really enjoyed it. This was my first time seeing it, but I'm gonna put it B tier, probably top of B tier, yeah. So it's famous for its troubled production. There were a lot of issues going on with it, with the shooting, with the editing, different things like that. And a good director's cut was never able to be made, so we never got to quite see Paul W.S. Anderson's vision, but this is like the closest film he had to a masterpiece. The rest are mostly like crappy video game movies like Resident Evil, and it's really a shame. Like this had so much potential, and it still turns out to be a very creepy movie. I think it does a lot of stuff well, but it is a little bit disjointed. I think that's gonna keep it from being an A, but it has a really great atmosphere, another really great cast, and yeah, similar to The Ritual in like blending people's trauma with the visuals of the spaceship. And I think, yeah, a lot of great stuff in Event Horizon for sure. Up next, we've got Videodrome. This is going straight to S tier as well. Hell, I'm gonna put this near the top. This is a weird movie. It's a very influential film. It's David Cronenberg at what I'd say at his very best. It's quintessential Cronenberg. It's got all of his weird tropes and visual imagery, and yeah, a lot of great stuff in here. And it tells like such a dark tale so coldly in such an interesting way. It is a very unsettling, uncomfortable movie in a similar way to Creep. It's just, yeah, a very unnerving film more than it is like jump scary or outright scary. It gets under your skin in a very Cronenberg way, and yeah, I really love it. Okay, up next we have Suspiria. This might be another hot take for me. Suspiria's going A tier. I'm gonna put it top of A tier, but I think it's a little bit overhyped. Like, I think it has a fantastic atmosphere, great sound design, great cinematography, but the story itself is kind of hard to follow. The characters are kind of dumb. I don't know. I don't think it's as great as everyone wants to say it is. I think it's one of Argento's best, but Argento films in general are a mixed bag, and they're usually pretty hard to follow. Suspiria is one of the hardest to follow, I'd say, and while it's got some technically great stuff going on, I think the story just falls a little bit flat by the end. The final witch feels very anticlimactic, and yeah, it's a very beautiful sensory-based film, but I don't think it's quite a masterpiece. People can definitely argue that though, and I wouldn't put up much of a fight. Jack Frost 2, Revenge of the Killer Snowman. Definitely S tier. Now, I'll put it Jack Frost 2, D tier. D tier movie. Better than Jack Frost 1. It's more fun. It doesn't have snowman sexual assault. So yeah, slightly better, not great. Wouldn't really recommend it, but it's kind of a fun one. Alright, yeah, up next we've got Triangle, which was a very fun surprise for me. Gonna say A tier for Triangle. Put it just behind The Ritual, I'd say. But yeah, definitely a strong film. One of the better, well, I don't want to spoiler, one of the better time loop movies that I've seen. It's hard to find one that I really like. I really liked this one though, and yeah, it takes a while for the twist to be completely revealed, but once it is, I think seeing the cycle happen again and again is really compelling, and watching the character think she's breaking it again and again only to realize this is part of the loop. Yeah, very compelling film. Tries to say a lot, which I really enjoy, as well. It's very allegorical, which I enjoy as well. So yeah, Triangle's a good one. I'd definitely check it out. Okay, damn it, I'm running out of room again. Can I zoom out anymore? Oh. Okay, we're gonna have to just be careful here. Might have to move some things around in a minute, but before that, we'll do Silent Night, Deadly Night. This is... It's a fun one, but I think it's ultimately a C tier as well. So, where I have Prom Night. It's better. It's more fun than Prom Night. I think it's better than Halloween. Rob Zombie's Halloween as well. I'll put it in between the two Halloweens. But yeah, it's got a little bit of that sleepaway camp charm, but not enough of it. It still has it's just got a lot of weird stuff going on. The weird time jumps as we see Billy grow up and be abused, and he's this weird adult. It's very interesting, but it also isn't compelling enough to make it a film I want to revisit very often. I'd honestly rather watch some of the weird ass sequels that come out of this franchise more than I'd want to watch the original. Or maybe even part 2 I think is more interesting than the first one, but I need to wait to review that one before I say that concretely as well. But yeah, overall it's a fine mid-grade slasher film. I think once again you can do a lot better than it though. Okay, now we've got the 2011 thing. I'm gonna say this is a B tier movie. I'm gonna say it's low B tier, but it gets a lot of flack for the visual effects that they put over the practical effects, and I get it. They don't look fantastic a lot of the time, but it still has a good amount of suspense. It works well as a prequel to the original. It definitely doesn't match the same vibe or the same aesthetic, the same look of the original thing, but I think for a requel, prequel, whatever you want to call it, I think it does a decent job. The monster effects are kind of repetitive and go a little too far near the end, but I still think there's a lot of good moments in this one, and I like the playing with the language barrier between characters. I think that's smart, and it's cool to have a couple of women in the mix as well, even though it's obvious that one's gonna be the final girl. All right, up next we have Re-animator, and oops, running out of room here. Re-animator is definitely S tier as well. I'm gonna say, put it right there. That feels like a good spot for Re-animator. I don't like it quite as much as I like From Beyond, but it still is really, really great. Stuart Gordon at some of his best here, and yeah, just fantastic performances by everyone in the cast. So much fun is being had, and it's both dark and funny and grotesque and absurd. Just so much good going on here. You can really see Stuart Gordon's roots in theater in Re-animator with so many monologues and over-the-top ways of speaking, but I think it all works in the movie's campy favor, so definitely an all-time classic. Then we've got Bride of Re-animator, which I'm going to say is low B tier. I think it does a decent job of capturing the spirit of the original, but it's also kind of weird. It loses its consistency a bit. Like, it takes a lot of tangential little routes off the main story a lot. Herbert West doesn't have a ton to do for a while. It's really early on, they're like, we're gonna build a bride. Then it just a lot of wasting time until they're like, okay, we're at the finale, time to unveil the bride. And Dr. Hill feels like a funny, weird afterthought in this one. So yeah, it feels like a bunch of scenes mushed together without really having the cohesion together, if that makes sense. But still some great visuals, some fantastic practical effects, and the bride's performance at the end, I'm blanking on the actress's name, but she does a stellar scream. Then we've got Beyond Re-animator. I think Beyond is going to be a D movie as well. I'll put it probably behind Hellraiser Inferno, if I'm being honest. It looks super cheap. It looks like a sci-fi original movie, to be honest. It's, yeah, just the film quality. It might be shot on video. That might be part of the reason. It just does not look good, but it's weird with it being a lot of Spanish characters. It doesn't make any sense because they're still supposed to be in Massachusetts. Very odd, and the effects don't look as good. Herbert West doesn't have much to do. It's great having Jeffrey Combs return for it, but he no longer feels like the same character. There's been such a massive time jump, and it's just weird to see. Herbert's been in prison this whole time, and he literally hasn't changed at all, and his experiments really haven't advanced at all either, so it feels pretty stagnant and unnecessary. Up next we have Sinister, which I'm gonna say is another B movie, I'd say. And I don't know, it's pretty successful. I'm gonna put it, I'll put it up here, just above Trick or Treat. I think that makes sense there. And yeah, Sinister, I think, has a lot of good stuff going for it. It builds up a really great, creepy atmosphere. And the actual little videotapes that Ethan Hawke's character finds, really great stuff. And the best parts of the movie is when those things are playing. And it's not bad most of the other times. There's a few moments that lose me when the ghost kids are kind of like running slow motion and Ethan Hawke narrowly misses them. Like little moments like that don't quite as work. And I do really like the ending. I think it's a really good bleak ending, but yeah, overall a pretty solid horror movie. I think one of the better ones we've gotten like in the 2010s for sure. Oh yeah. Up next we've got Martyrs. Martyrs is going to S tier, I'd say. One of the better modern horrors we've gotten. I think I'll put it... Feels weird to have it in front of Jurassic Park, but I guess Jurassic Park should realistically be much higher up, but that's fine. I'll put it there. I think it's a really solid film. I think it's a great example of taking these two very different tones and kinds of movies and mashing them together, but it works so well in the instance of Martyrs. It starts off as this home invasion and you slowly learn about the two characters, and it takes that hard turn into something else, which I won't spoil if you haven't seen it, but gritty, dark, brutal movie and very emotional. It really pulls at the heartstrings and it really gives you something to think about by the end. So yeah, I think it's a really great film. All right, now we've hit the Hannibal Lecter franchise. Manhunter, I'm gonna say A, probably high A. You know what, I'll put it above 7 actually. Yeah, really great film. I just released my rankings of the Hannibal Lecter franchise. You'll see where that one landed in just a bit when I put the other ones in here, but yeah, really great cinematography here. Really great film. Yeah, Manhunter has a lot of great stuff going for it. It's a visually stunning film. Michael Mann just makes this thing look so freaking beautiful. I would just put it on as like background if I just was like working on something. It looks so good. But yeah, performances are great. William Peterson is fantastic as Will Graham. Tom Noonan is really creepy as Francis Dollarhide. And yeah, just a lot of great stuff going on with the cinematography, with the lighting, the sound design, the different frame rates that are used at the ending to really make it feel disjointed. It's very interesting, and yeah, a really great beginning for the Hannibal Lecter franchise. That being said, I am going to put The Silence of the Lambs in the S tier. I think this is Hannibal Lecter at its very best. Hell, it's going pretty high up. That feels like a fine spot for it. Yeah. I mean, Anthony Hopkins, Jodie Foster have such great chemistry together in this film. It is just so well acted. The dialogue between them is so great. You get so much growth out of Clarice Starling throughout the film, and you get to know her so intimately. It's really great. A lot of great subtext in there about just being a woman, specifically in the FBI, but it can apply to so many things. And yeah, she's just such a great character. But yeah, another fantastic performance by Ted Levine as well. Buffalo Bill is terrifying, but also somewhat sympathetic. And yeah, just a fantastic film all around. Then we've got Hannibal. I'll give Hannibal, I'll say it's a B tier. Probably better than Halloween Kills. This feels like a fine spot for Hannibal right here. Yeah. Hannibal is a little bit more of a mixed bag in this franchise, but I'd say it's still overall, it's a strong film. Ridley Scott gives the film a very specific feel. It is very bleak and dull visually, and that's a little disappointing, but it still has very memorable components. You've got man-eating pigs, Mason Verger, just, yeah, a lot of weird stuff going on. It's one of the weirder entries. It's very weird coming off the heels of The Silence of the Lambs. It's just a lot of interesting decisions that were made, but Anthony Hopkins is still great. Julianne Moore does give a great performance as Clarice. It's hard thinking of her as Jodie Foster, but it's something you can do. The first half in Italy seems unnecessary to me. I don't think that much time had to be spent there. I don't necessarily know what they would have done, but Detective Pazzi just seems kind of like a filler time for Hannibal. It just seems a bit like a waste of space, so I'll put it in the B tier, but it's still a very solid film. Now we've got Red Dragon, and this is going to be another instance where I ignore how I ranked this film within the franchise of Hannibal Lecter, because I actually enjoy this more than Manhunter, and I had it ranked as my second favorite. But I think when thinking about it in the grand scheme of filmmaking, it's a little bit less impressive. I think there's just a lot more going on with Manhunter, whereas Red Dragon is telling a bit more of a straightforward story, which isn't a bad thing by any means, but yeah, I think I'm going to have it lower A tier in this case. But I do think very well acted. Ralph Fiennes gives a really great performance as Dollarhide. I think it's a really outstanding performance. Edward Norton is fantastic as Will Graham as well, and it's really the performances that bolster this movie, whereas it isn't as technically exciting as the other iteration like Manhunter is, but still a good film. And then finally we've got Hannibal Rising, which I'm gonna put in C tier, and it's gonna be a little lower on the mid C tier. I think right behind Curse of Chucky seems fair. Actually, I'm gonna put it. That seems like a fine spot for it. But yeah, Hannibal Rising is still, for it being the worst of the franchise, is pretty solid. It's still like a mid-tier horror movie, and yeah, still some solid performances. I would say Gaspard Ulliel is the most standout here with his performance as Hannibal. But yeah, a lot of interesting decisions made for this one. It being beginning at World War II with basically Hannibal and his sister being orphaned, and then some guys eat his sister, spoiler alert, and he's basically on a revenge movie from there. It's just very over the top for the very subtle character that Hannibal would then go on to be, so it doesn't really fit in with the others in my opinion. So it's mostly when comparing it to the other films in the franchise that it gets knocked down, but it just doesn't make sense as much in the franchise, and it is pretty much a lower quality than the other Lecter films. So I think C tier is fair for it. All right, and then we have the last few non-franchise movies I've covered. First up, we have A Dark Song, which I'm gonna say is high B tier. Let me see. I'll put it above Sinister. Yeah, I think that seems fair. Yeah, I think A Dark Song builds a great atmosphere. It's definitely a slow burn, but once it gets going, it really is going, and that tension really builds. It has a very isolated setting for the movie, and it really is playing just off two characters interacting with each other, and they both give great performances and really play off each other really well. And yeah, by the ending, the creep factor is up. It's not a jump scary movie, it's more a things lingering in the background, which works a lot better for me than the jump scares do. So yeah, I think A Dark Song is definitely a really great, really underlooked hidden gem movie, so definitely check it out. Brains. Where'd you go? Yeah, Return of the Living Dead easily going up to near the tippy top here. I'll put it in 4th place. Damn, I realize I have Carpenter at the top. That's fine, I don't care. Yeah, Return of the Living Dead is so much fun. It is, yeah, just a really fun movie. Just a fantastic take on the zombie genre. And yeah, such memorable characters. The punks are so much fun. But even the working class stiffs are so much fun to watch as well. Yeah, just so many fantastic lines. Rabid weasels. I mean, everything in it is just so much fun. So yeah, Return of the Living Dead is absolutely it's funny to call it a masterpiece, but I'd say it is. It's really, really great. One of the best horror comedies of all times and one of the best zombie films of all times. It's got fantastic practical effects. I mean, the Tar Man looks great. The half woman I don't know if she's an animatronic or exactly how she was accomplished, but looks so good. And the zombies even have so much humor. Send more paramedics. I mean, yeah, just so funny. If you haven't seen The Return of the Living Dead, definitely go check it out. I haven't seen any of the sequels, and I hope to check them out sometime soon, but it's my understanding that none reach the pinnacle that the original does. But I mean, that would be tough for any film to do. So all right, then we have 976 Evil, and I'm sorry, Olivia, but I think I've got to put it D tier. Actually, we'll do C tier. Yeah, I think low C tier seems like a fair place for it. It is a fun horror movie, but compared to so many others, it just feels kind of quaint and niche and doesn't really excel at anything. Yeah, it's not a movie that I think I would revisit very often. Feels kind of low budget, feels somewhat derivative of a lot of other horror movies, but yeah, it's very interesting that Freddy Krueger decided to direct a horror movie, so that's fun. But I think it ultimately didn't lead too much of anything, and the phone number gimmick can really only get you so far. All right, and then we have Brian De Palma's Sisters, which I'm gonna put this at the top of A tier. It's darn near an S tier for me. I think I'm gonna keep it out of S tier because I've only watched it once, but man, it was really great for me. I think it just really shows the beginnings of De Palma and the way he tackles horror, and it just has this great balance of really well done cinematography and filmmaking, but also the really experimental stuff that begins in the third act, and just really great performances. Margot Kidder does a great job here, and it's great to see her getting more of a lead role, whereas I knew her more from like smaller roles like in Black Christmas. But yeah, so much fun. It is a very political movie. It has a lot to say, which I also love. So yeah, definitely excited to watch Sisters again sometime pretty soon. A very fantastic film. And finally, we have come to the final movie, Possessor by Brandon Cronenberg. Once again, another A tier movie. Not gonna put it super high. Yeah, that's a good enough spot for it. I'm not sure exactly where I'd put it, but yeah, Possessor was a lot of fun. I think it was 2020 it came out, so very recent. But yeah, Brandon is definitely walking in his father's footsteps in this one. It's got so much like classic Cronenberg, but in a very contemporary sense with very contemporary, exciting new visuals. It feels like a fresh version of some of the newer David Cronenberg stuff that's been coming out, but kind of flopping a little bit. But yeah, very brutal, violent movie, but it feels very purposeful, similar to how Martyrs does, I think. And yeah, two great performances by the lead actor and lead actress. And yeah, if you haven't checked out my review for it, go check it out. But yeah, I think overall definitely one of the best we've gotten in the 2020s so far. And yeah, so that is the tier list here. I think it's looking pretty good. I mean, I could sit here and pick out a few things to change, but overall I think I pretty much stand by what I've said here. Everything pretty much makes sense to me. But yeah, I hope y'all enjoyed this. This is different than the kind of thing I usually do. So yeah, if you liked it, disliked it, let me know down below. It's not something I would do often, but if you'd want to see like tier lists for other things in the future, maybe let me know. But yeah, overall, I think this was a fun way to rank the franchise or rank all the movies I've covered. It would have been hard to make a very specific number 80, number 79, like deciding which ones are better, because these films are all so different. They're trying to do different things. They're succeeding on such different levels. So I think this made more sense to me as opposed to strictly saying this film is better than another, because while I might have something in front of something on a tier, they're still all S tier movies or they're all F tier movies. So yeah, something for everyone to enjoy and something for everyone to hate on this list, I'd imagine. So yeah, this was a lot of fun. Thank you all so much for joining me. I hope you are excited about the 2-year anniversary. I know I am, and I'm excited for 2 more years, hopefully more, of Hamburgers and Horror. Join me in 2 weeks as I cover a patron request for The Perfection. Thank you all for joining me, and an extra thank you to my patrons. As always, I'm Noah Hook, and thanks for watching Hamburgers and Horror. Stay safe out there. Thanks for watching my horror movie tier list. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe so you can keep up with all my horror reviews. And if you want to help support the channel further, you should check out my Patreon account. Thanks, y'all.